Welcome everybody to another episode of First 40, the series where I go through my first 40 cards for a new legend coming out in the upcoming set. This is for Spirit Forge, and we've got Renata as the next legend I'm going to be going over. And I'm very excited about this legend. I think she's been slept on quite a bit, and maybe rightfully so. To be clear, Renata's probably not in the best shape, but I still think the deck is really fun, and it does some really cool things. And so I want to jump right into this and talk about my version of Renata that I've been testing. And it's gonna look pretty normal from this screen, you know. Chem Baroness, she is the new Order Mind legend. When you are an ally hold, you may exhaust me to play a gold gear token exhausted. When your score is within 3 points of the victory score, your gold add an additional energy. And to remind you, gold give you basically 1 power when you destroy them. Now when you destroy them, you get an energy and a power, which is really, really good. It's a very strong ability, which is why they've gated it to only within 3 of victory. For the chosen champion, we would go with Renata Glasc Mastermind, 5 energy, 4 might, and she has this ability that you can only use when you're on the battlefield, that you can either spend 1 energy and 1 power to draw a card, or 4 energy and 4 power to exhaust her to score a point. More on that later, as Hostile Takeover is that signature spell. We're going to play a couple copies of this really powerful card. Basically says take control of an enemy unit at a battlefield and ready it. It will start a combat if there's more enemies there, so it can be used for removal. And then other than that, it will just conquer immediately. At the end of the turn, you lose control of the unit and send it back to your opponent's base. But it can be really good for stealing some points or actually removing some of your opponent's units. For the battlefields, I start out on Candlelit Sanctum. This is in order to try and find some of the key pieces for this deck to try and find victory. You want to be getting Conquerors and then looking at the top 2 and trying to find the exact piece that you need. Then we have Arena's Greatest, which is going to be the going first battlefield. You want to be able to just get on that point tempo and get to that 5-point threshold as fast as possible so that your gold starts getting extra value. And Treasure Hoard, of course, we just want more gold. We want more of that value for our Renata ability. We want more of those extra energy that we'll get later out of these gold. And so, taking a look at the deck, I think a lot of people look at blue, yellow, and think it's more controlling, or Invictor can be a little bit aggro, but that's because he generates units. I was very interested in the concept of aggro Renata, and that is what I have built. This is a deck that focuses heavily on reaching that 5-point threshold as fast as possible and leveraging the extra resources that you have from the gold you generate through the game to then finish the game with Time Warp, Thousand-Tailed Watcher, Hostile Takeover, and Renata Glasc Mastermind being able to come in and either score a point off of a Time Warp, you play her, you move her in, you warp, and then you're able to score, or by drawing as many cards as you have gold once you are able to get your Renata Legend ability online, because every single gold becomes worth an energy and a power and can be used to draw one, and that is not a once per turn or an exhaust ability for Mastermind. So you can draw as many cards as you have generated gold throughout the game to find the pieces you need to close things out. So really like this concept. It's been okay. It's been a pretty decent start. I think there needs to be some more refinement on this deck as a whole, and that's where I want to present it to you. As this is a cool idea. I've really enjoyed this, and I think this is a really great starting point for you to maybe push forward if Renata is a legend that you're very excited about. So let's start off easy. Let's just go through some of the 2-drops and the early game drops that we're going to be going with. Plundering Poro and Honest Broker, very simple explanation for these 2-drops. They generate gold. Alongside that, we also are playing Blood Money. So sometimes if you miss your 2-drop, you can still have the Blood Money around as a potential turn 2 play when they try and move in with their 2. You can just shoot it with Blood Money and make a gold. On top of that, we've got some extra 3s. So going second, we still have some more options. Card Sharp is going to unconditionally generate 1 gold and may generate a 2nd gold for you. Pickpocket is going to steal your opponent's. So many units are making gold. So there's so many legends are making gold right now. So Pickpocket can destroy a gold and then create a gold for yourself. It can also destroy seals, which are relatively popular right now. So I really like that Pickpocket. Works in the main board with Renata because you have both Treasure Hoard and Card Sharp, so you have ways that you're giving gold to your opponent anyways. And from there, it is Pit Crew, and this is a very key piece of the deck, and I want to talk a little bit about why, and there's a few accelerates that kind of make this work. So Pit Crew and Dropboarder both are units that are able to conditionally accelerate, right? Pit Crew says when you play a gear, ready me. And then Dropboarder says when you play me, if you control 2 or more gear, ready me. So you combine these two effects with your gold generation that you have in the early game through your Wages of Pain, through your Blood Monies, through your 2-drops that are generating gold, in order to get a lot of basically movement tempo in colors that usually wouldn't by allowing these units to ready. There's really cool playlines with Pit Crew where you move into Treasure Hoard, conquer it, pay for the gold, and then move your Pit Crew back home so that it's safe and you can make sure that you still have that 3 might body for a future turn. Or even send it there, make a gold, then Wages of Pain your opponent's unit on the other side to ready it once you've moved it back home again, and then conquer the other side. So maybe you're conquering both sides with the same Pit Crew on a single turn, really allowing you to accelerate the amount of points that you're getting very quickly and lead towards that 5-point threshold. And Dropboarder is kind of similar in that sense that it is just a 4 cost that doesn't have any power associated to it that can come in ready to go conquer and get you towards that 5 points as fast as possible. And it's really all about that. That is the name of the game, is turning on Chem Baroness as soon as possible, getting to those 5 points so that your gold becomes additional resources for you to overwhelm your opponent. We continue on that same line of thinking with Sprite's Call. This is another way that you're getting a ready 3 might unit to come in and go and conquer one side. Even if it's just temporary, it's still going to get a lot of that value. And I really, really enjoy just having all these different effects trying to get you to that point threshold and win the game. The end game kind of, the way you finish from this point, right, is you either get Renata Glasc Mastermind out onto the board, get her to a battlefield and draw a bunch of cards, or you can get her there and then time warp, and if you time warp with her at a battlefield, you can win from even 5 points instead of the 6, right? You can win sometimes even earlier than that if you're able to warp. And then if you have enough gold, you might be able to draw like 1 or 2 cards and then warp again. There's a lot of different ways that you can find wins off of warp plus Mastermind plus the ability of Chem Baroness that kind of gives you all these extra resources. Obvious one, of course, Thousand-Tailed Watcher. You're putting so much pressure on your opponent early and getting to such a high point total that Watcher is a very real finisher, and you're going to have a lot of extra resources that sometimes even as early as like turn 3, turn 4, you have the resources to be able to play a Thousand-Tailed Watcher, plus you have some gold to maybe even accelerate in a drop border. There's some bunch of different playlines that you can kind of get with these top end that can look to finish off a game. Another way that you can get these last few points is through Hostile Takeover. Hostile Takeover is going to be able to take control of a unit at a battlefield. So if they have something big that you can't push through with your units, you can't push through with your spells, you can't push through with your Thousand-Tailed Watcher, Hostile Takeover just says, okay, that's mine now, and I'm going to conquer that side, and now I'm going to worry about the other side that doesn't have as much stuff going on over there to get maybe this double conquer and end the game in that way. Plus, you get additional synergies with Hostile Takeover with your Call the Weak and your Hidden Blade, which are the main kill spells that we've put in the deck, where now you're killing their unit with Hostile Takeover and with Call the Weak. You play the Hostile Takeover, you take over their unit, you play Call the Weak, and each player kills a unit they control, so you just pick the one that you stole from your opponent. So they actually lose 2 units to the Call the Weak, which is very, very good. Hidden Blade, you can kill the unit you stole, and then draw 2 cards, because now you're the controller of that unit. So there's a lot of really great synergy pieces with Hostile Takeover and these yellow removal spells that can kind of generate some really awesome endgame scenarios that are difficult for your opponent to have to play around unless they're in maybe the green colors and they have the ability to counterspell some of these cheaper costing spells. Speaking of, I would love to go over all of the spells as a whole. I've kind of mentioned them here and there, but I want to talk about the spell package that I've kind of come to. We're starting with Stupefy. This is a very clear blue piece. It just helps me try and take more favorable trades with some of these early game units. They're relatively weak, but sometimes just the breakpoint of an additional might can be enough. And because this is a very low curve deck, cards that replace themselves are quite important. You can run out of cards in this deck, and if you run out before you're able to get to the point where you can start to refill your hand with Renata Glasc Mastermind, that can put you in a lot of trouble. So I like Stupefy for that reason. It can also synergize with Blood Money, which is going to give you that early gold. I only play 2 copies because it falls off a cliff in the late game, but in the early stages, dealing with a 2-drop, dealing with a, Draven's biggest fan, or overzealous fan is what it's called in this game. If you're able to take that down with the Blood Money, it's really nice. Generate you some gold. Hidden Blade, you just want some cheap kill spells in this deck. Because you're playing tempo, you don't care if your opponent draws, because you're just trying to get as many conquers as possible, and so just killing something with Hidden Blade so that you can push in your weak unit can be worthwhile a lot of the time. A lot of your units are weak, so Cull the Weak is quite nice to be able to kill your unit, kill their bigger unit, and kind of push through from there. I like Wages of Pain, because of the fact that it is going to generate a gold unconditionally when you cast it, and I think the gold is really nice. 3 is going to be able to deal with any of the early drops, and in a pinch, it can be hidden when you're trying to have those end games or force a hold where you can hide it there and bluff Hidden Blade, and potentially your opponent will stay away from the side that could be the Hidden Blade, and that can be quite helpful. And finally, as for the spells that we haven't really talked about yet, is Consult the Past. I think it's really nice to spend one of these gold tokens that you're generating, if you have a lot of them, and just have it draw 2, because you can spend a gold to pay the hidden cost when you move in. You conquer, you hide the Consult the Past on your opponent's turn, you're just going to draw 2 for that 1 power, which I think is a very high value, and it is worthwhile having in the deck, and it allows you to bluff things like the Hidden Blade. I think generally with this deck, you have enough runes that you don't need to hide Hidden Blade or Wages. You can kind of keep the runes up and use them more flexibly, but the fact that you've got these and then you have the Consult allows a lot of hidden bluffing, which can be very valuable and forcing your opponent into spots where they may misplay, thinking, oh no, well, it's just another Consult the Past, but actually it's the Hidden Blade that gets to blow them out. So really like having this variation of hidden cards. You've also got Sprite Call and Hostile Takeover that in a pinch can also be hidden to continue that potential bluff mind game throughout the course of an entire game. So that is the deck. General playline is going to be try and get early 2-drop out, go for the early conquers, and then utilize Pit Crew and Dropboarder to pivot around with the additional generation of gold to look for the fastest possible conquers. From there, it is to establish Renata Glasc Mastermind, get her into a location once you're at 5 points, get her to a battlefield so that you can start drawing cards until you find a finisher, and try and finish with Time Warp or Thousand-Tailed Watcher. The deck works pretty damn well so far for me. It definitely still feels like it can have some issues into the top dogs, and so I don't want to try and sell you Renata as the meta breaker, meta defining deck, but this is a very fun way to play her, and I would encourage people to give it a try if you really like Renata, and see if there's ways that you want to push it from here and refine it even further and take these ideas to your own Renata gameplay, because I think this has been a very fun way to play her. With that said, I have put together a maybe board, some things that I would consider bringing into Renata that I think might be worth trying out in this deck. And I want to start with a combo that I played a lot of so far, and I more recently took it out because it felt inconsistent, and that is the Jace Mana Progress Vanguard Armory combo. It definitely adds a ton of power to the deck. When you're able to get this out on turn 2, which because you have so much gold generation in your early game, if you draw these two together, you often are going to get to play it on that turn 2. I felt like I almost always won the game. But the math behind getting to play this on turn 2 is actually really bad. It's something like 20% chance that you'll actually see it. So odds are you're just not going to have this playline early game to be able to make happen. And while Vanguard Armory didn't feel like the worst thing to play for 7 runes on occasion, I actually think it generates a lot of value, and it is a really impressive card. Jace felt really bad when it wasn't also bringing out a Vanguard Armory. And so for that reason, I tried to cut it and see if I could play other cards that I felt like would be better in more circumstances. But it's actually possible that what this deck needs is just a little bit more power, and you might just need to roll the dice and play the Jace Vanguard Armory combination because it is just so strong. From there, another idea I had that I haven't really been able to experiment with much is the Zero Drive. This is the gear that is going to play all the units that it banished to its effect ignoring their costs. It adds Death Knell when I die, banish me. It banishes under the 0 drive. Eventually, you can banish the 0 drive and get all of the units. Now, if you do this with a bunch of drop boarders, pit crews, and thousand-tailed watchers, it works as a really great end game finisher where you get all of these accelerate effects that all come out of the 0 drive at once, and you're able to try and look for that final push and score. I think the theory behind 0 drive is probably better than it is in practice, but it's something I'd maybe like to try, and I encourage people to actually experiment with this card because I think there's some decent potential for it maybe being actually quite powerful. From there, another kind of unique piece, one of the cheekier ones is Ava Achiever. I've had a couple people message me about Ava Achiever and say, have you tried Ava Achiever with Renata's spell? And the answer is no, I actually haven't tried this. And it maybe is better than I give it credit for. And this deck has 5 different cards with hidden in the text. So if any deck is maybe going to find some value out of Ava Achiever, it might be this one, being able to pay those hidden cards for a very cheap cost. You tend to have a lot of runes. The power costs of the deck as a whole are relatively low until you're at the end game. So, plus you have a lot of gold. So maybe Ava Achiever actually is able to overachieve in a deck like this one. From there, I want to talk maybe about getting some bigger spells into the deck. I think maybe some of the issues is this deck might be too low to the ground and struggle when it's not able to get to the 5 points fast enough. Maybe your opponent's able to stabilize and then start holding and preventing you from getting in. So maybe add Riptide Rex, Singularity, Drag Under, and even from there, Unchecked Power. There is a lot of ability to accelerate in this deck and a lot of rune cheating. So what if you just say, you know what, I'll just play Unchecked Power and then I'll follow it up with a drop border, or I'll follow it up with a pit crew and a gold generation or something of that nature. And maybe that is a way that this can actually work out. I haven't tried it, but it is also a way to just deal with the really big threats that I could see this deck having a lot of issues with. So definitely kind of going a little bit bigger on the removal could be something that this deck stands to do while still maintaining that identity of trying to get to 5 points as fast as possible. It just gives a little bit more top end, a little bit more removal. In that same vein, you could still stick to the lower end, but still maybe add some bigger removal at higher power costs or some bigger tempo swings at higher power costs. And that's like your smoke screen. I think -4 is going to allow some of your weaker units to win fights that they really shouldn't. It comes at the cost of a power, but you might be able to afford that. It's actually possible that this deck can stand to have more power costs throughout the build, and that can maybe work out. Other than that, Sprite Mother, adding more accelerate, right? Continuing to lean into that of getting more ability to have units come in ready and get those conquers as fast as possible. And I think Sprite Mother is a potential card that could fit in. While I've not been the biggest fan of this card due to the power cost, I think that maybe this is the type of build that can make it work. Alongside that, I think that Renata Glasc Mastermind is such an important piece of the deck that maybe Retreat should come in into the decks that are doing some back row removal that make it harder for you to find a time to get your Renata Mastermind onto the board. And I think Retreat is a great way to do that. It's good with Watcher when you're able to save that and replay it. So that can be pretty nice as well. When it comes to gear removal, I think Salvage, this is something that I think will come up in any video about a order deck right now. There's a lot of gear out there, and Salvage is one of the most efficient gear removals in the game. Being able to kill the gear and replace itself, I think, is really nice, and I would consider playing Salvage in a Renata deck in the sideboard if you think that gear is going to be a big problem. And the last card I included in this maybe board, it's a little bit of a smaller maybe board than I've done sometimes, is Premonition. This is one I'm not convinced on, but I will say this deck does run out of cards because you just are able to play so much cheap, efficient stuff that you end up in a spot where if your opponent has been able to find the answers, they can run you out of resources. Premonition is just going to refill that, and at the cost of, okay, well, I didn't get to 5 maybe yet, but I've got some gold, you can play the Premonition, burn through some of your gold, and refill that hand. And I could see Premonition actually make it into this kind of build more so than many other builds out there. So this might actually be the home where Premonition is actually a pretty good card. But with that said, I mean, Renata has a lot of really cool ideas behind her. You can build her full control, try and play for the holds to generate gold. You can play her aggro like this and try and go for as fast as conquers as possible, get to the 5 points as fast as possible so that you can utilize the second line of text of her ability as quickly as possible. You can try and go for a more token-focused build with yellow Renata that I didn't even include in this one because when it comes to the style of deck I built, it doesn't really fit into a maybe board. But there's a completely different side of order that you could potentially try to build in Renata. And I think that the creativity that exists within these colors and for this legend do make her really appealing and really fun, even if her power level in the early stages of Spirit Forge have left something to be desired. So if you're interested in playing Chem Baroness, I encourage you to try it. Try out my list, see if you like it, see if you hate it, see if it gives you any ideas for the future. That's the point of this series, and I hope that maybe this inspires you to try this legend out for yourself and see if it's something that you find enjoyable. But that will be it for this episode of First 40. Please let me know in the comments what you've been trying in Renata, or if you've got any suggestions for this build for people who may be watching the video as well. If you liked it, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you for the next one.